Think about the last time you trusted someone completely. You believed in them. You opened up. You gave them access to your time, your energy, maybe even your secrets. And then they let you down. Maybe it was a friend who disappeared the moment things got hard. A co-worker who smiled to your face and talked behind your back. A partner who took everything you gave and still wanted more. And here's the worst part. You saw the signs. Deep down, you saw them. But you told yourself, no, they're good. I just need to give them more time, more chances, more of me. That right there, that's not kindness. That's something else entirely. And it's been costing you more than you realize. This video isn't about becoming cold. It's not about building walls or assuming the worst in everyone you meet. This is about something much harder and much more powerful. It's about learning to see people clearly, to trust with your eyes open, to stop handing out unlimited access to your life to people who haven't earned it. The Stoics figured this out over 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. These were men who lived in some of the most brutal, politically dangerous, and socially complex environments in human history. They couldn't afford to be naive, and neither can you. If you've ever felt emotionally drained by people you trusted, if you've ever asked yourself, why do I keep getting burned? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see trust completely differently. And if this kind of content speaks to you, subscribe to the channel. We use Stoicism as a real tool, not a collection of pretty quotes, to help you build a stronger, clearer, more grounded life. Let's get into it. Here's a belief most of us carry without even questioning it. Trusting people is a virtue. The more you trust, the better person you are. We were raised on this idea. Be open, be generous, see the good in people, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And on the surface, it sounds beautiful. It sounds like the kind of person you'd want to be. But here's what almost nobody talks about. Blind trust isn't generosity. Blind trust is a form of laziness. It's easier to trust everyone than it is to actually pay attention. Think about it. When you trust someone immediately, without evidence, without observation, what are you really doing? You're not seeing them. You're seeing the version of them you want to exist. You're projecting your own values onto someone who may not share them at all. And then, when they betray that trust, you feel blindsided. But were you really? Most of the time, the signs were there. We just didn't want to look. The Stoics called this wishful thinking, and they considered it one of the most dangerous habits of the mind, because when you see the world as you wish it were, instead of as it actually is, you set yourself up for a pain that didn't have to happen. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly in his private journals, the ones we now call meditations. He reminded himself over and over to look at reality directly, not to soften it, not to filter it through hope, to see it clearly. That's the foundation of what we're building today. Let me tell you about a guy. We'll call him Daniel. Daniel was the kind of person everyone liked. Easygoing, funny, always willing to lend a hand. And for years, he had a best friend, someone he'd known since college. They talked every week. They celebrated each other's wins. When Daniel started a small business, his friend was his biggest cheerleader. "You've got this, man. I believe in you." But when the business started actually doing well, when Daniel began making real money, getting recognition, building something shifted. His friends started showing up less. The calls got shorter. The energy felt different. There were small comments. "Must be nice. You think you're too good for us now?" Daniel brushed it off. This was his best friend. He trusted him completely. Then one day, he found out his friend had been telling mutual acquaintances that Daniel had gotten lucky, that he hadn't really earned his success, that he'd changed for the worse. Daniel was devastated, not just by the betrayal, but by the realization that the signs had been there for months, the passive comments, the pulled-back energy, the subtle resentment hiding behind a smile. He just hadn't let himself see it. Here's what the Stoics would say about Daniel's situation, and it's not what you might expect. They wouldn't say, "People are terrible, trust no one." They would say, "You failed to observe. You saw what you wanted to see instead of what was actually there." That's a hard truth, but it's also a freeing one, because if the problem was perception, perception can be trained. Epictetus, a man who was born into slavery, who had literally everything taken from him, said something that sounds almost counterintuitive at first. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. But he wasn't just talking about reacting to bad events. He was talking about something deeper, the way we assign meaning to people and situations before we have enough information. The Stoic approach to trust wasn't cynicism, it was observation. They believed you should watch how people behave, not what they say, not what they promise, not how charming they are in the first impression, but how they act, consistently, over time. Think of it like this. You don't judge a tree by looking at it once in spring, when it's full of green leaves and beautiful blossoms. You watch it through all 4 seasons. You see how it holds up in the wind. You see what it does when it's cold, when it's under pressure, when things get hard. People are the same way. The person who is endlessly kind when life is easy, how do they behave when they're stressed, when they're scared, when they have something to gain by treating you poorly? That's the version of them you need to see before you extend deep trust. This isn't paranoia. This isn't coldness. This is simply paying attention. Seneca put it plainly, consider carefully before you trust, but once you've decided to trust, trust fully. The mistake isn't in trusting people. The mistake is in trusting them before you've actually seen who they are. Let's talk about what this actually does to you inside. When you trust blindly and get burned, there's a very specific kind of damage that happens. It's not just the loss of the friendship or the relationship, it's something that cuts deeper. It's the loss of trust in yourself. Every time you ignore your gut, every time you override your own instincts to give someone one more chance they haven't earned, you send yourself a message. Your perception doesn't matter. Your feelings are wrong. You can't be trusted to read people. And over time, that message accumulates. You start second-guessing your own judgment. You feel confused in relationships because you've trained yourself to dismiss the very signals your mind was sending you. This is where anxiety lives. This is where that low-grade emotional exhaustion comes from. The feeling of being drained without being able to explain exactly why. The Stoics understood that the mind needs coherence. It needs your actions to align with what you actually observe. When you keep acting against your own perception, when you keep trusting people your gut has already flagged, you create an internal dissonance that slowly wears you down. Protecting your trust isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. And self-respect, the Stoics called it one of the foundations of a well-lived life. Now, I want to stop here for a second, because I know exactly what some of you are thinking. This sounds like I should just stop trusting people. That sounds lonely. That sounds like giving up on connection. I hear that, and it's worth addressing directly. There is a massive difference between intelligent trust and emotional withdrawal. The person who has been burned too many times and decides to close themselves off completely, that's not stoicism, that's trauma responding to pain. That's the pendulum swinging too far in the other direction. What the Stoics taught was a middle path. Stay open, stay willing to connect, stay curious about people, but let trust be earned, not assumed. Think of your trust like a garden. You don't walk up to a stranger and hand them the keys to your garden and say, "Do whatever you want in here." You observe. You invite people in gradually. You see how they treat the space, whether they water things or uproot them, whether they're careful or careless. and you make decisions based on what you actually see, not on what you hope is true. That's not cold, that's wisdom. Marcus Aurelius himself was known for his deep loyalty to the people who had proven themselves to him. He wasn't closed, he wasn't a hermit, he was the emperor of Rome, surrounded by people every single day. But he was selective. He paid attention, he tested over time. And that selectivity didn't make his relationships weaker. It made them stronger, because they were built on something real. There's a woman, we'll call her Maria, who spent most of her 30s getting into relationships too fast. Not just romantic relationships, friendships, business partnerships. She was warm, generous, and deeply trusting by nature. And for a long time, she thought that was her greatest strength. But she kept ending up in situations where people took advantage of her generosity, where she gave more than she received, where she invested deeply in relationships and realized, too late, that the other person had never been as invested as she was. After the third business partnership collapsed and left her financially strained, something clicked. She started doing something simple. Before she opened up to someone new, before she extended real trust, she just watched. She paid attention to how they talked about other people when those people weren't around. She noticed whether they followed through on small things. She observed how they handled inconvenience, frustration, situations where they had nothing to gain from being decent. It took about 6 months, but she started seeing people more clearly than she ever had before. And here's what surprised her most. She didn't become colder. She actually became warmer with the people who had earned it. Because she wasn't spending her energy on the wrong relationships anymore, she had more to give to the right ones. That's the Stoic promise, not emptiness, clarity. So how do you actually do this? How do you move from blind trust to intelligent trust without becoming bitter or closed off? Here are 3 principles drawn directly from Stoic philosophy. The first, watch behavior, not words. This sounds obvious, but we are wired to respond to language. When someone says the right things, we feel good. When they apologize beautifully, we forgive completely. When they promise, we believe. But words are easy. Behavior is hard to fake consistently over time. Epictetus taught that what a person does reveals their character. Not what they say they believe, not how they describe themselves. What they actually do, especially when it costs them something. Start paying attention to the gap between what people say and what they do. That gap is where their real character lives. The second, trust in layers. You don't have to decide immediately whether someone is trustworthy or not. Trust can be extended gradually in proportion to what's been demonstrated. Start with small things. See how someone handles low-stakes situations. When they're late, when they make a mistake, when they disagree with you. How do they behave? Are they honest? Are they fair? If they handle the small things well, you open the door a little more. If they don't, you have information. You don't have to burn the whole relationship. You just know not to give them access to the things that matter most. The third, separate people from your expectations of them. This is the deepest Stoic principle here, and it's the one that changes everything. Most of our pain in relationships doesn't come from what people do. It comes from the difference between what they did and what we expected them to do. We built a version of them in our heads, idealized, perfect, exactly what we needed. And when reality didn't match that image, we called it betrayal. But Marcus Aurelius would push back on that. He'd say, did they betray you? Or did you simply fail to see them accurately from the beginning? When you stop projecting your values onto other people and start observing who they actually are, your expectations align with reality. And when expectations align with reality, disappointment loses most of its power. This doesn't mean accepting bad behavior. It means seeing clearly enough that bad behavior doesn't blindside you, and good behavior genuinely moves you. Here's what this all comes down to. When you learn to trust wisely, you're not protecting yourself from people. You're protecting something much more specific. You're protecting your peace. The Stoics were obsessed with this idea. Not peace as in the absence of difficulty, but peace as in internal stability. The ability to move through your life without being constantly destabilized by the choices other people make. When you trust blindly, you give other people enormous power over your inner state. Every time they fail you, your world tilts. Every time they disappoint you, your foundation shakes. But when you trust with your eyes open, when you see people clearly and decide consciously how much access to give them, you take that power back. You're not waiting to be let down. You're not walking around bracing for impact. You move through life with a kind of calm steadiness. Not because you're naive about what people are capable of, but because you've stopped making yourself dependent on them being something they never were. That is what Seneca called equanimity, the unshakable inner ground. And it starts with something as simple as paying attention. So let me leave you with this. Think about someone in your life right now, someone you've given your trust to. Don't think about what they've told you. Don't think about how they've made you feel in the good moments. Think about what they've shown you, consistently, over time, in the moments when it cost them something to do right by you. Does what they've shown you match what you've believed about them? That's not a question to answer out loud. That's a question to sit with, because the Stoics weren't interested in making you suspicious of the world. They were interested in making you clear, present, grounded in reality. And when you see people clearly, really clearly, something interesting happens. The ones who are worth trusting become more precious. And the ones who aren't, they stop having power over you. That's not coldness, that's freedom. I want to hear from you. Think about your own life. Has there been a moment where you trusted someone despite knowing better? What did it cost you? Drop it in the comments. You don't have to share everything, even one sentence, because sometimes writing it down is the first step to actually seeing it. If this video made you think differently about trust, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this content reach people who need it. And if you want to keep going deeper into Stoic philosophy as a real, practical tool for your life, not just quotes on a screen, but ideas you can actually use, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming, and it's going to change the way you see things.